Hi guys, welcome everyone. My name is Vera and today I'm going to show you how to paint our super fun abstract painting right here. Now before we start, let's go through all our supplies to make sure we have everything that we're going to need for today. First thing you need is a canvas. I'm using fairly small one. I'm using 8 by 10 inch, but you're more than welcome to use larger size if you wish. Just make sure you adjust the sizes of your brushes according to the size of your canvas. Which brings me to brushes. I'm going to be using, as always, 3 different brushes, large, medium, and small. In my case, my large and my medium are going to be square today, and I have the small pointy one. So that's what I'm going to be using. Yours don't have to be square. Square is my preference. So this too can be any shape, but this one has to be a really good detailed brush with a pointy tip because we do have quite a few details here, those tree trunks and branches, and they're gonna need to be done with a fine brush. So make sure you have a few of different sizes plus a fine brush. If you're using larger canvas, make sure you grab a larger brushes than what I'm using. So basically your large one is going to be, if your canvas, let's say, is twice the size of mine, your large one should be about twice the size of mine as well. So just, the bigger the canvas, the bigger the brush. Paint. I'm using very standard set of what we always use, which is primary color soothing grade acrylic. Primary colors are yellow, red, blue, plus black and white. And I'll be mixing them into every single color that you can see on your painting. If you're not much into mixing and you would much rather use premixed colors, you're more than welcome to do that. We do have quite a few colors here, so it's going to be a lot of mixing. But if you want to simplify your job and you don't want to mix as much, I would suggest that you grab a pre-mixed teal. Dark teal will be very helpful, and a pre-mixed brown, because those are the two colors that I find people struggle mixing the most. But you can just follow along with me and we'll mix them all together from primaries as well. And of course, you're gonna need a paper towel or reusable fabric cloth, so something to dab your brush on, and we're gonna need a water. Oh, by the way, we'll also need a couple extra things today. We'll need a pencil because we will start with a sketch, even though it's quite a simple painting. I do prefer this one started with a sketch so the colors don't overlap, so we end up with a very vibrant painting. And at the end of this painting, you will need a business card, or maybe you have some sort of points card that you don't use, or something that you could wash after. So a card, either a business card or a points card from some store, or some other plastic card or a cardboard card. All right, so what are we gonna start with here is I'm going to start by putting my horizon line. I would say it should go at about middle, or you could put it just a tiny touch lower than a middle. So I usually start by identifying where the middle of my canvas is. So for me, the middle is right here. I think I want to put it just a tiny smidge lower. So I'm going to do it right here. So do you see it, just a little smidge lower. And how I do a straight line without a ruler, you're welcome to use ruler, by the way, if you have one, is I fix my end of my pencil here, and I fix my hand using my finger right at the edge of my canvas. And as I glide my finger up and down the edge, this will follow, and it creates a line that's parallel to the edge of my canvas. There we go. That's my line. That's how you make a straight line without any ruler. But again, if you have ruler, you're more than welcome to use it. Now, I have my straight line, so I know where my middle is. Now I'm going to roughly outline my 4 trees and my ends here. So I'm gonna have one right here, a little hill, one right here, a little hill. They can be slightly curved or straight. It's entirely up to you. And again, this just helps me position things. I likely not gonna really follow those lines precisely. I just wanna know where they are approximately to help me position everything else. All right, so I have that. And now I'm gonna do my 4 trees. So there's gonna be a little hill in the middle, right, a little hill. And then out of that, I'm gonna have 4 trees. So it would be wise to have a middle line going through your canvas as well, just very lightly, again, for sketching purposes, so you end up with a pretty good distance on each side and a pretty symmetrical painting. I think mine is not very much in the middle. Let's move it a little to the left. I think this is more middle. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. That's better. We're not going to keep this line. We're going to erase it. It's just for us to, you know, have straight trees and have a symmetrical painting-ish. Okay, so my 4 trees, they're all going to start at around here, so a bit higher than my island. It's going to be 1. It's going to be my red one somewhere right here. Then my orange one behind it. And my yellow one behind it as well on this side. And a blue one last. So do you see I have 4 trees. And this is just a very rough outline. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just trying to position them. That's literally all I'm doing. And give them some sort of rough shape. Okay. Yeah, 4 trees. I am not sketching tree trunks, by the way. You can if you really want to, but I find that they're so easy to do and they're done in black, and black overlaps everything, no problem. So we really don't need to reserve any space for them. Okay, and I'm going to move this all down now and create a reflection. So again, I'm gonna start with our island. I'll make a reflection of our island first. It does not have to be a perfect match, by the way. Then I'm gonna add a reflection of my trees. Again, very roughly. It does not have to be a perfect, you know, perfectly mirrored image. That is not the goal at all. And generally this painting is super abstract, so just have fun with it. Let it do its thing. The less you control it, the more you're gonna enjoy it in the end. All right, so do you see? I roughly sketched them down. Again, they don't have to be perfect as long as they're there. And now I can erase my middle line. I don't need it anymore at all. And I have everything positioned, yay! So this one's, do you remember this curved lines? If you wanna add reflection, you can. I mean, it's not really necessary, and I'm gonna lighten it up because I'm not planning to follow it precisely. I just wanted it for the positioning. So I'm gonna make it quite a bit lighter. There we go. It's barely visible, but it's there. It's not there. And if it's not there, that's okay too. All right, moving on to our painting. So what I'm going to start with here is I'm actually going to start with making my brown. I want to have a mixer brown for every time I need it. I just want to have it so I don't have to worry about it. So I'm gonna grab my large brush, I'll dip it in water, and I'll scoop about equal parts of red and yellow on a side. So I'll scoop some red, I'm gonna scoop some yellow, mix them up. And it's gonna look red, and that's perfectly normal because red is more dominant color, so it will just overtake your yellow. And that's totally fine. And then to this, I'm gonna start adding black little by little. Don't add equal parts of red, yellow, and black because your black will overtake everything. It's more dominant color, so you always want to add less of it. So this is a great brown. I'm going to keep this for now, and I can always adjust the shade of it as I go. If I find that I want a darker one, I'll add some. If I want lighter one, I'll add some white, and so on. But generally, the adjustment for brown is if, let's say, you try to make brown right now and it's not working, it looks maybe a little too green, that means you don't have enough red. So just add a bit more red. If it looks too orange, that means you don't have enough black. Just add more black. If it looks too purple or almost like a wine color, that just means you don't have enough yellow. So that's how you adjust it based on what it looks like. All right, and now I'm gonna start with my background. So I'm gonna scoop some white on my brush, and I'm gonna go right around my trees with vertical brush strokes. So all these areas around my trees, I'm gonna add vertical brush strokes of white. And notice, yes, I'm overlapping my pencil. I'm going over my pencil. Don't be afraid to get some on your pencil. That's totally fine. I'm intentionally doing it because again, that's rough outline. I do want my white to go a little bit under. As long as you still see your lines, it's all good. In my case, I can see them. Yes, they get lighter because of white, but they don't disappear fully. So I'm gonna add some white here. You could technically paint the whole background white. It's totally fine. Or you can reserve a little bit of uncovered canvas around here and on the bottom. So I would say that's entirely up to you. I will reserve a little chunks of uncovered canvas. And we do the same thing on the bottom. Oh, another thing, guys, I want to mention here is actually two things I want to mention. One, you might want to have a blow dryer for this. I am definitely going to use a blow dryer this time because there's quite a bit of layering, and I do want my layers to dry in between so that I can get those really vibrant colors. And the easiest way to do it is with the blow dryer. Alternatively, you can just, pause this video and wait a little bit for it to dry, do something else, go wash some dishes, make yourself a snack, make a phone call, check emails, whatever you need to do. And then come back to it whenever it's a little bit drier. So you could do that, or if you just want to do it in one sitting and speed it up a little bit, just grab a blow dryer. I will do that this time too. I don't usually, but this time, I remember when I was originally making this painting, it was drying quite a bit. So I would like to do it in one sitting. So I'll grab a blow dryer this time and I'll blow dryer. So do you see on a glare how much white I have? So I reserved a little bit of space here, and all those that are outlined, I did not color. I did flick in some white over my lines. It's not like I didn't touch my lines at all. I just didn't intentionally color inside of those things. And now I'm gonna make a light gray. So I'm gonna scoop some white on the side, let a little bit of black. And if you want to, you could even, make it slightly different color so it's not just straight gray. You can add a shade of blue to it, a shade of pink, or a shade of purple. And purple is red and blue, so you can add a little bit of red, a little bit of blue. We'll give it purple. But honestly, this painting is complicated enough as far as mixing that we don't really need to. But just in case you want a slightly different color scheme, you can give your gray a bit of different shade if you wanted to. So what I'm gonna do with this now is I'm gonna start adding it from the top. So these two corners here are gonna be heaviest, and then it's gonna be less and less and less as I go down and as I go towards the middle. So let me show you what I mean by that. And again, I'm working with those vertical lines. So do you see, I added a little bit of gray there. Now I'm gonna go down and spread it a little bit. So you see, it's still most concentrated in around that section, but it does come down a little. I might as well even make it a touch darker because it doesn't read. Oh yes, that's better. You see, it reads a little bit better. I don't need it super dark, but I did want it a smidge darker than what I had. Just gonna add it here. So you see the majority of it there, but then it almost cascades down, and I'm gonna do that on the other side. Beautiful. If you wanted to, you could color the top. If you guys painted with me before, I really have a thing for coloring the edges. I really like it. I'm not a big fan of unfinished edges on the artwork, so I like to do it either as I go or at the end of painting. Depends on the painting and how much time I have, whether I'm willing to spend a few more minutes as I go or couldn't be bothered. But at the end of the day, I always like to do my edges. So this time, I think I'm gonna aim for doing them as I go. So do you see, because we added some gray there, it makes sense to just go ahead and color that all gray. And now I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the bottom. So from these two corners, I'm gonna bring it up. So I'm basically mirroring what I have on top to the bottom. And again, see how light it is? And even right now, because there's nothing going on, it looks a little darker than what it is. Once we add all those contrast colors, this will look even lighter. You're barely gonna be able to see it at all in the background. You don't wanna have too dark of a gray there because then everything is gonna turn very stormy. It's gonna be one stormy day. Okay, so again, a little bit of gray. And let's bring it from the bottom up here. And this is why we added that white. It's nice blending underlay. So as you start going up and spreading your gray, it should start blending into your white. If your white is still at least a little bit wet, you will create a really nice gradient look here. But for that, your white needs to be at least a little bit wet. If it's fully dry, you might actually want to add a little bit more white for the blending purposes. My white is still somewhat wet. It's not very wet, but it's wet enough for me to blend it. So again, add it and go up, blend it a bit. This is approximately what it should look like. And again, it's abstract art. It can look however it wants to look. Let it be. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to color my bottom. The same gray. If let's say you run out of gray and you have to mix it again, and it doesn't happen to be the exact same, that's totally fine. Okay, and I will go a little bit on my edges, so just a touch. I'm not gonna go all the way, but wherever I added gray on front, that's where I'm gonna add it on the edge too. Okay, which one was my top? Which one was my bottom? Tough question. Very tough question. I think this was my top. Because they all look the same. Or maybe that was my bottom. It's very hard to figure it out at this point. Because I turned it a couple times, so who really knows? I guess it doesn't really matter. Oh, no, that's my top. That's my top. Okay. Found it. All right, guys. So next one, we're going to move on to creating a base for our trees because we're going to make our trees in so many different colors, but we have to start somewhere. So we're going to start at the base. And I'm going to start at making dark teal as well. That's another color that we don't have just yet, so we're going to make it. So I'm going to scoop some blue. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. I'm trying to make a fairly dark color, so don't add too much white. I'm only adding white because my paint is semi-transparent, which means it doesn't have any white added into it as it comes. Like, do you see? This comes as a pure pigment. If you make it a bit transparent, it gets lighter, but when it's concentrated, it looks almost black. That's how dark it is. So I'm just adding a little bit more white to make it more visible. And then I'm gonna add a tiny, tiny smidge of yellow. And that's what makes it teal. Now, don't overdo this. If you overdo this, it's gonna turn green. And even though green is a wonderful color, that's not the color we're looking for. We're looking for like a greenish blue, teal, aqua, whatever you call it, but not pure green. So this is a good color. I'm gonna keep it. And for my base of that tree, I'm actually gonna add some white to it. I'm not gonna use all of it. I'm gonna take some on a side and mix with white because I still wanna use this color later unmixed. So I'm gonna take some, mix it with white, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna color my tree. So how I'm coloring it, I'm coloring it flat first. And you can use medium or a large brush. Honestly, it whatever works for you and for your painting. So do you see I colored it flat, but now I'm gonna take a little bit more of this color and I'm gonna start dabbing it closer to the left edge, because left edge is what's gonna be visible. This one is gonna border with the tree, it's not gonna be as visible. So here I'm trying to create more of a fluffier look. You see, I went all around this edge here and I fluffed it up. And I'm using the corner of my large brush. Do you see? It creates a really kind of fine dots, dabs, because my brush is square. So if I did the whole brush, they're going to be quite large. So I'm using the corner to make them smaller. If you use a pointy brush, you're going to be using just the tip. So it really depends on what brush you're using, how you're going to be creating it, but just make sure they're pretty fine dots, dabs, whatever you want to call them, flicks. And then I'm gonna bring that down, except on the bottom I'm not gonna do those flicky dots. I'm just gonna do vertical lines. So I'm gonna fill it so it's absolutely full on the inside. Do you see here? It needs to be quite full. But closer to the edge, I want it a little more transparent. So fill it to the full in the middle, and then closer to the edge, we're gonna go and, you know, flick that a little bit outside our lines. Do you see? To almost spread it a bit. And this needs to be more of a dry brush technique, so you need to have a bare minimum of paint on your brush. Bare minimum. All right, so that's underlay for our blue. And I'll also add that right here. So do you remember that line? I will add it back, just in case we can see it. So at the corner here, I'm gonna add a little bit of that. So you see very small line as it goes towards our island, and it gets bigger as it goes towards the edge. You don't have to go all the way because we're gonna cover it with brown. You're not gonna see it. So I'm only adding it where I'm going to see it. Further down, I'm just not going to see it. So there's no point adding it. All right, that's good. And what I'm gonna do next is I can take a little bit of this color while I'm on it. I'll make it even lighter. And I'll add it on a background. So just a tiny touch, but notice how light it is. Pretty light, right? So pretty much exactly where we had our gray and white, we're just gonna add this in addition to it. So do you see, very lightly with a dry brush technique, I'm going around and I'm adding this blue in addition to our gray and white. And again, you wanna focus on the areas that are generally gonna be a bit darker, which is, you know, the edges versus everything around your tree. Around your tree, you wanna keep it as light as possible. So you don't wanna bring much color in there. Okay, top and the bottom. See, it gave this a tint of blue, just very light. That's what you're aiming for. Do you see how light and transparent it all is? Now you could go on to your top and the bottom and just add a couple flicks of that if you're doing your top and the bottom. But also not super important. I will though, personally. All right, great. Moving to next tree. So again, underlay on the next tree. So this next tree is yellow, but the underlay is actually going to be a little bit darker than straight yellow. So we're going to take our yellow. I'll take it on the side here. And I will add to it a tiny smidge of brown, just a very tiny smidge. So do you see it got a little bit golden, right? this is the underlay color that I'm going to use. It's going to be a little more golden. And with this color, I'm going to go right here again. And you can add a touch of white to it if you want to, so it's easier readable on our teal. Again, I'll cover the whole thing, and then I will fluff up the edge just the same way that I did with my teal tree, using the corner of my brush. And then right away, I'm going to take the same color and I'm going to go on the bottom onto the reflection. And then I'm going to take some straight brown. I'm not even washing my brush. So I'm going to take a little bit of straight brown and I'm going to add right here into closer to the middle of the tree. I'm going to add a bit of a brown shadow. And I'll do that on both the tree and the reflection. Now, while we're on a brown, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add brown to this two spots. So straight brown, you can mix a touch of white if you want it a little less transparent, but other than that, nothing. Straight, fairly dark brown. I'm not trying to make it lighter. I just added a smidge of white so it's less transparent, not because I want it lighter. I'm gonna go ahead and literally color this in with my brown. So what do you want? You want it to be pretty solid in the middle and you have that flick towards the outside. So I colored it in, not even close to my line. So by the way, this is my line. Do you see? It's a bit further. So I colored it with some gap in between. And now from here, once I colored my area that I really wanted solid, now I'm gonna start dry brushing it up. Do you see? It breaks up that solid line and makes it nice and dry brushed. And I'm going to do the same going down. Awesome. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Let's color some section first. Really flat. Now from there, we're going to do dry brushing up and dry brushing down. And again, if you're doing your sides, now's a good time to do them. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of yellow now again. You can mix it with white, with a touch of brown, or just straight yellow, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna mix mine with a touch of white. And I'm gonna go onto my island and I'm gonna flick it from here up and out. Like this, I would say about halfway through. And of course I'm gonna bring all of that down onto the reflection as well. Then I'm going to take straight brown and I'll do the same. But I don't want to cover all my white, yellow, sorry, not white. So I'm going to keep some of it definitely visible and readable as just straight yellow. All right, next two of my trees is going to be red and orange. This one is actually base orange, even though it has some yellow in it and some red, but the base is going to be orange, and this one is going to be straight red base. So I'm going to start with the orange one. I'm going to take some yellow, mix in a little bit of red, and some white, just a tiny touch of white. I'm going to go ahead on my orange tree. And I'll do the same thing that I did before. So I'm going to color it in flat. And then I'm going to take the corner of my brush. And I'll fluff it up on the edge. And reflection. So reflection, again, remember, you don't have to fluff it with the edge. You just want to make it a bit more dry brushy and linear. And then I'm going to do my middle one, which is going to be straight red for the base of it. So just straight red like this, or red mixed with a little bit of yellow if you want. And we're just going to color it in. Same thing, I color it in flat first, and then I'm gonna go and fluff it all up a bit. Where it connects to other trees, actually, this one everywhere, because it overlaps all the other trees. And for the bottom, again, I'm just going to do vertical lines. All right, and let's do the base on our island as well. So again, this is going to be a bit of orange here. I'm still doing this with a large brush, but I would say medium or small one is probably easier at this point here. And then I'll do some red. And then I'll do some brown. All right, you guys, I think this is the first time that I would actually like to dry it, because the rest of the colors are easier. The layers that we need to add are easier added on a dry paint versus wet paint. My paint is still pretty wet. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pause this video. I'm gonna take my blow dryer. Unfortunately, my cord doesn't come all the way to my painting station, so I'm actually gonna need to bring painting to my blow dryer versus the other way around. So I'm gonna pause this video, I'm gonna blow dry it, and I'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. So it's gonna feel literally like 1 second to you. So I suggest you either do the same, just pause this video, grab a blow dry your painting, and then come back right away. Or you can give it a minute, let it dry, just watch what I'm doing next, and then whenever it's dry enough for you to continue, you can rewind the video back to this point and follow along. I'll see you guys in a second. All right, my painting is dry, so I'm going to continue, and I'm gonna go back to my teal color. And now you can take it just how it comes, right? Do you remember the dark version that we made? So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna go on to my teal tree. And again, I'm gonna start, you can either use large or medium brush for this, whatever works better. So you're gonna start by filling it in a bit, but you don't wanna cover up all your light teal. So you wanna just add a bit less. If this was the size of your light teal, this is the size of your dark teal that you wanna add. And then again, closer to the edge, you fluff it up, you add those dots. But you still wanna see some of your light teal behind it. So make sure you don't cover all of it. Beautiful. And we're gonna add a second layer on our bottom. So again, just remember the flicky dry brush lines is what you were looking for here. And now you can add some of it on your, some of this dark teal on your brown here. So I'm gonna flick it, flick it, flick it, flick it. Very dry brushy again. This is the same dark teal, it's no other color. Of course, if you're doing your edges, you can add some on the edges. All right, now I'm gonna move on to my second one, which is gonna be my yellow tree. But I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna go with my medium brush now, and I'm gonna go back to my brown. And this time I'm gonna add a bit more of a straight dark brown right here in a flicky, dabby brush strokes this time. So I'm not gonna do them linear. I'm just gonna add those flicky, dabby brush strokes. Couple groups of that closer to where it connects with my red tree. And I'm gonna do a couple lines of that on the bottom. Some of a darker brown on the island here. And some of that dark brown is gonna go on the right side of my red tree. Again, in the same flicky, dabby little brush strokes motion. See, I'm darkening up my right side of my red tree. And the bottom and the right side of my orange tree. Like, I'm not using too much paint on my brush, I would say. It's still somewhat transparent. And of course, I'm gonna mirror all that to my bottom. So on the same area, I'm gonna do a couple of lines. So whatever is underneath, I'm gonna do a couple lines of brown here. And some brown right here. All right, that looks really good. And now I'm gonna do something that you guys could totally skip if you wanted to, but I still wanna add it because I did it originally, is I'm gonna take some white, large brush, tiny smidge of brown, make what looks almost like a nice, very light beige. And with this nice, very light beige, I'm gonna add a couple of brush strokes on a background as well. Very lightly. You wanna use bare minimum of paint on your brush. So again, you will be dry brushing it, because you don't wanna have too much paint. You don't wanna cover up all the other beautiful colors you already have. It just really adds a smidge of warmth to your background. That's all it does. Because right now your background is very cold, right? It has blue, it has gray. Those are cold colors. So this is just gonna add a tiny smidge of warmth to it. So anywhere you want, just a little bit. The most important part is that you add very little of it. All right, great. Now, I'm gonna add a smidge of white to my blue. Do you remember the dark blue we used? I'm not trying to make it super light. I'm trying to make it about medium. And with this color, I'm gonna go again on my sections right here, and I'm gonna dry brush some of it. But then at the top, I'm gonna add a little dabs. So do you see a little lines, a little dabs? Only on the top though. Same here. And again, dry brush technique all the way. Couple lines to add a little bit of a lighter blue, couple dabs. Lines and dabs, flying away. Looks beautiful. And with the same color, you can add just a touch of it on this edges here. So basically on the very corners to darken up the corners a bit with this medium blue. So just a touch, you don't want to overdo it as well. And the same for bottom. See, our background is super complex. The amount of colors we added there already is a lot. And of course, if you're doing your edges, feel free to flick a couple on the edges. Not that it is super important. All right, let's go back to our trees. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to add a bit of black. So I'm gonna take my medium brush and take a touch of black. And I'm gonna start with this tree. I'm gonna add just a little bit of it. Some of it I'm gonna even take, do you see I'm dabbing off my brush on a paper towel so it looks transparent and light? So it doesn't read like black, so it reads more like gray. Alternatively, you can even mix some of that dark blue with black and use that instead, because that's gonna give you about the same result. And I'll bring that to the bottom. So this is just straight black, but because it's so dry brush, it looks very light. And now I'm gonna take a straight black, a bit more of it, so it actually reads black. And I'm gonna add a couple of those little flicky brush strokes with straight black that actually read black. And I'll do the same on the bottom. The next tree. So this one doesn't really have much black, the yellow tree, so I'm gonna leave it. But the red one does have a bit of black. On the same area where we added brown, I'm gonna add a little bit of black. So right into my brown. But just less. You don't wanna, cover up all your brown with black. You wanna enhance it with black. You wanna add black to it as an addition, but you don't wanna cover the whole brown. So this is my addition. And again, I'm gonna bring whatever I did on top to the bottom as well. And I'm gonna do the same flicky dabby brush strokes very lightly on my orange tree. And then I'm gonna bring it down. Another area where I'm gonna bring some black is gonna be the middle. So I'm gonna start by just adding line right here. And then from there, I'm gonna flick it up in black. I'm using my medium brush, but small brush is a really good brush to use here as well. And down. And for the sides, I'm gonna flick a little bit of black here on the ends. Not a lot though. And again, whatever you do here, bring it to the sides if you are doing your sides. And then we're gonna do our beautiful branches. But let's actually do one more thing before we do branches. I'm gonna take a touch of red and I'm gonna add it onto this orange tree, just a little bit right here. If it mixes with your black, not a problem. Actually a good thing if it does, so don't be afraid of that. Just a touch of red there. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to my tree trunks. I'm gonna grab my small brush, Take a little bit of black. I always like to water it down a little when I use my small brush so that my lines are really nice and fine. And now I'm going to add tree trunks right underneath every single tree. So I'm going to start with this one. I'll add a tree trunk. And I'm going to add a couple branches. Do you see? I'm always starting from the tree trunk and I pull my line out. From the tree trunk out. That way, wherever you start, you push a little bit harder on your brush to create thicker line. And then as you go, you just use the tip and it gets thinner. And I'm going to widen up my tree trunk on the bottom a touch. It's one tree trunk, then I'm going to do second one right here. And again, I'll add a couple branches to it. And my third tree trunk I'm going to do right here. Same deal with branches. And my fourth one right here. All right, and then I'm just gonna add lines from the bottom up. You see little flicky lines. We're assuming that there are more trees growing in a distance. So again, you're always gonna start them from the bottom and flick them up. And push a little bit harder where you start. So that line is a little bit thicker on the bottom and it gets thinner towards the top. And then we're going to mirror all that to the bottom. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect mirroring. It doesn't have to be super perfect and precise, but just try to somewhat get the essence of what's going on the top and bring it to the bottom. So still please attempt the mirroring, even if it's not going to be perfect. And now I'm going to add a couple branches. So again, I'm going to actually I'll do branches later. Yeah, we'll do them later. It's fine. This looks really good. I might just add a tiny smidge, like a little tree or some sort of branch right here. Maybe on the other side too, maybe not. Yeah, why not? All right, looking good. So what I'm gonna do now is, again, I'm gonna blow dry. So I'm gonna pause my video once again, just the same that I did before. I'm gonna blow dry it and I'll be right back and we're gonna continue. All right, my painting is dry, and make sure it is really dry because we're gonna start layering a really light color. So if your black is not dry, it's gonna create a big mess and we don't want a big mess. So I'm gonna move on to yellowy orangey colors here. So let's start with the orange. So if you have a little bit of orange we used previously, awesome, you can use that. If not, you can make new orange, just yellow, red plus some white. So we're gonna make orange. And with this color, I'm gonna go on to my red tree. And I'm actually gonna dab up the left side of my red tree. I'm using medium brush, but you use whatever works for you, but I just probably would caution you against using the largest brush. Medium is probably a better size here. And again, whatever you do on top, you do on the bottom. We'll add a little bit of that here. Then I'm gonna make yellow mixed with white. So I'm gonna take a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, mix them up, but don't make it too light. You just want it a bit more vibrant than normal yellow. So this is yellow without white, this is yellow with white. It still looks really yellow. And I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna dab up the left side of this yellow tree with it. And you see it adds texture, it's vibrancy, just makes it look awesome. And again, whatever I do on top, I do on the bottom. And I will also add that onto my red tree right over my orange. If they mix, it's not a bad thing. Let them mix, totally fine. If they don't, that's all right too. You see, I'm overlapping my orange with some yellow, and I'm even gonna go on the upper part of this orangey tree right here. And then again, I'm gonna bring all of that to my bottom. Whatever I did on top is coming down to my bottom. And then after that, to the same color I just used, I'm going to take a smidge of brown and I'll add it to give it a bit of that, again, golden undertone. And with this more of a golden color, I'm going to go onto the tops right here, and I'm going to dry brush with a minimal amount of paint the tips where my brown connects to my background. You see? Just a touch of that. And of course, whatever you do on top, you're going to do on the bottom as well. This is what it looks like. And if you want to make it more interesting and add a couple of actual dabs, you can, but only after you have the line. So if I wanted to add a couple of those dabs to make it a bit more textured, more interesting, you could. And it would look like they're trees with some leaves in the distance. That's the look that it will create. Doesn't this look really great? I think it does. All right, and now I'm gonna add super light yellow. So now I'm gonna mix yellow with white again, but in a different proportion. So this time you're gonna mix a lot of white into it. So you see this time it's more like a pastel yellow. It's not as yellow, it's a lot more pastel. And that's exactly what you want. And with this yellow, we're gonna go here and here, and we're gonna highlight. So right over the areas where you already have yellow, you can add a little bit of this lighter yellow. So do you see? It creates a lighter islands of color. Just make sure you don't cover all your previous yellow. This should be just an addition to it. And again, whatever you do on top, you're gonna bring on the bottom. All right. And now we can actually add our branches. So I'm gonna go back to my small brush. I'm gonna take, sorry, wrong color. I'm gonna take my black and I'll water it down again to make fine lines. And then I'll do my branches. So just choose where you wanna have them peek out from. And again, you're always gonna flick them from the bottom up, so where they grow from towards where they grow towards. Couple fine branches there. If you struggle to do this with a brush, you can always wait until it's all dry and actually do this with like a little Sharpie, with a fine tip Sharpie or a black pen. Do you see I did a couple branches? I am not mirroring that to the bottom, it's totally fine. And now the only thing that's left for us, oh, sorry, two things, white and blue. Let's start with the accents of blue. So again, I'm gonna use my medium brush and I'm gonna use two tones of my blue, darker one and a lighter one. I'm out of teal personally, so I'm gonna remake it. If you have to remake it too and it doesn't match your first color, it's not a big deal at all. It's totally fine. So I'm gonna take my darker teal that still has at least some blue, some white, so it's not super dark. It still should be able to read over your other colors. And you see this dark spot? So I'm gonna add it there. Just a couple of those flicky brush strokes. They will break up this red, hot, fiery, dark section with this beautiful cold blue. And of course, whatever I do on top, I do on the bottom. So I attach there, attach maybe on an island, and then I'm gonna make my second one. So I'm just gonna add a bit of white to it. to make either medium or light or somewhere in between. And with this color, I'm gonna add the same thing in exact same places. Just a little highlight in this blue. Some on the island and some on the bottom. If there's any other places that you personally want to add it to, absolutely go for it. You might want to add it right here, let's say, a bit more or not. Again, that's entirely up to you. All right, and then the only thing we have left is white. So this is where your business card comes in. Let me see if I can find a business card anywhere. I can't, but that's okay. I'll use this. I'll use a sticky note because you just need something with the edge. So I'm gonna fold it in half to create a better edge. And this edge is what I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna put my white paint onto my edge. Use any brush for this, or literally just dip your card in white paint. And I'm gonna go right here. And I'm gonna add those lines by just pressing my card there, and then I'm gonna flick it down. You see? Press and flick, press and flick, press and flick. I'm gonna feel my white again, and I'll do this again in a different section. So now I'm gonna go a bit lower. Beautiful. And I'm just gonna continue doing that. You feel it? And then you can drag it a little bit down. Ta-da! And it is done. The only thing that you could also add here is a couple lines manually with a small brush. So you can take small brush, a little bit of white, and you could manually add a couple lines if you wanted to, because those are different style lines. So it's good to have a combination. It actually looks very interesting. Or if you feel like you have more than enough lines, then don't add anything. All right. And after that, go ahead and sign it. And we are officially done. Guys, please feel free to share your results with us. There's a link in the description of this video to our Facebook group where we encourage everyone to share the results of their painting so we can see how it turned out and so that we can feel a bit more connected. Like we were doing it together in the same room, even though it's very virtual. This is what it looks like, and I am looking forward to seeing how your beautiful paintings turned out. Thank you all for joining me, and let's do this again sometime soon. Bye everyone.